sometimes happen that people see their favourite franchises translated to the big screen. What is even rarer than that is that they get a second chance to do so when the first time round didn't go as well, in my opinion. But what if that second time isn't quite what you expected either? Let's talk about Welcome to Raccoon City. Hi, my name's Drew and welcome to another review video on Flying Wiener. Now, if you're not familiar with Welcome to Raccoon City, I do not blame you. It came out about 2 years ago and probably was only on your radar if you are a game of the franchise Resident Evil, which is a gaming franchise first and foremost. And the thing I referred to in the intro was the first film franchise, which it's really hard to grasp that had like 6 or 7 films, which pretty much have nothing to do with the games. You've got characters in there and maybe locations, but apart from that, it's got nothing to do with it. It's a thing that really infuriates me. I watched them all, you know, just so that I can say I've seen them. And while I really liked the first one, which was quite okay, that is coincidentally also the one that is like the games the most. Every iteration, you know, every sequel that came after it just gets worse and worse. Anyway, just so you know, I'm going to preface this with I absolutely love the Resident Evil franchise, yes. And especially in the last few years, the company that makes is a Japanese company called Capcom. They have had hit after hit. So Resident Evil 7 came out in 2017 and I played that with VR, and it's one of the best and at the same time worst horror experiences I've ever had. I have never been more scared in my life. It was brilliant. I know some people are like, oh, why is that a good thing? Believe me, if you're into horror games, that's a good thing. Yeah, and then you had Resident Evil 2 Remake. The third one was kind of okay. You had Resident Evil 8, and just most recently, the Resident Evil 4 Remake, which I played for over 120 hours, which most people probably just, you know, set aside after maybe 30 or 40 hours. So I really love the franchise, and it's been really good gaming-wise. You know, it's gotten a lot of accolades, etc., very deservingly so. Capcom must be really frustrated that the film franchises now, because there are 2, just can't hit that spot. Like I say, the first one, I have nothing against Mila Jovovich, you know, I really love her in The Fifth Element. And like I say, I like the first Resident Evil film. It's just that, it's so painful watching these films. They're just bad. They're just bad. And now, so when it was announced that they're making a new one, Welcome to Raccoon City, you know, they're going to be faithful to the games and all that, and the guy making it, he knows the games and all these kind of things, I was really hopeful. Now, it's not a bad film, but it's just not what I expected. I don't know what many other people expected. It's just, it's weird to see that this is the result. Now, before I get too far ahead of myself, let's talk about the plot, because there are people out there who maybe don't know Resident Evil, or if they do know, they're like, okay, but what's the specific plot here? So what they've done is, they've taken 2 plots actually from the games. They've taken the plot from Resident Evil 1 and the one from Resident Evil 2, and they've smushed them together, which generally speaking makes sense, because even the games, they happen more or less at the same time, you know, or at least short time after each other. So it's like, okay, that's not too far-fetched. But what happens exactly? We're in this fictional city called Raccoon City, and there are weird things going on here. Something's wrong with the people. We're following along various people who either are already in the town or are coming to the town, and they encounter various residents, and they've got bloodshot eyes and losing hair, and just the whole thing seems very strange. And you can tell from the start that something is off here. So I'm not going to get too much into it, because frankly speaking, they've put too many characters in this. So, you know, I'm not going to go through who everyone is. We've got one sister looking for her brother. We're following a bunch of police officers who are both in the police station, and there's a group that's been sent out on a mission. And yeah, and we see what happens in this town. Now, you will not be surprised to hear, especially if you know the franchise, this has got to do with zombies. So we've got zombies appearing, right? And it turns out that the water systems in the city have been polluted over time, and this is turning the people into zombies. Why is this? Because there's this big bad company called the Umbrella Corporation, who experiment in biological warfare and want to create biological weapons. And so this is a byproduct of what's going on. So what do we see happen? What are the two main stories? Resident Evil 1, if you're not familiar, we've got this police, this special force of the police. Their name is STARS, Special Tactics and Rescue Squad. Oh God, I can't. That popped into my head randomly. I can't believe that I actually know what the abbreviation stands for. Anyway, they're a special unit with the local police. They get sent out to this mansion. There have been reports that things are going on there, so they're going there to check it out because also 2 police officers went missing. And then we've got at the police station, we've got a young rookie, his name is Leon, and he encounters the lady I spoke of before who is searching for a brother. And when the police station is under siege basically by the zombies, they have to fight to get out. Those are the two main plots. Like I say, the mansion is Resident Evil 1, the police station is Resident Evil 2. And the plots are fine, but I don't understand, and that's pretty much all I'll tell you about the story. And apart from that, it's just, I mean, you're not missing much, or there's not much that happens beyond that. So they have to fight for their lives, they're trying to find out what happens, they find, the lab where these things are created. It's pretty much like in the games, just on a much smaller scale at times, which is fine. Yeah, and then we wait to see if they can escape this hell. Now, what I really don't like is, as I said, is why they've taken both, because I feel that it would have been better to focus just on one. And Resident Evil 1 actually is, while it is the first game in the franchise and they didn't even know there were going to be more of them, it's a perfect introduction. And they could have even taken that intro just to make it scary, because in the game what happens is you just get this sort of voiceover narrative that there's, disappearances of people in the mountains, and then the ones that they do find are dead and they've been torn apart by some kind of monster, and they go to investigate it, and they end up at this mansion, and all sorts of crazy things happen in this mansion. It's a brilliant intro, it really is. I mean, while the way they did it, because of a low budget, it's really kind of campy and funny, etc. But, as a setting, it's really good. And we do in this film also have one sequence that's about, a few minutes, a good 5 minutes or so, that are generally good horror, because we've got one guy on his own, and lights are out, and zombies are coming, and he doesn't know from where, and the way it's shot and lighting, etc. It's very tense. It's really well made. It's great. It's just like the Doom film, if you remember that, where you've got that one cool 5-minute sequence in the middle of it. This is more or less like it, but the film Welcome to Raccoon City did have more good scenes, I will say that. So I really like that. But, it's just we've got too many characters, because they're trying to incorporate all the elements of both stories into one, smushing it together. It just gets too much. So from the story, I feel that they should have just concentrated on one side of the story and just keep it light with the games. Not that, I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying, you have to stick with the games because that's the only correct way to do it. All I'm saying is it makes sense. The games were made like that. And when you think about the story, if you know the whole thing, yeah, the stories are fine. You've got enough content, which much beloved word today, to easily fill one film. And it'll give you more time to focus on just a few characters, flesh them out more, give them more to do. Just overall, it works better. Also, I was very surprised to see this film only had a budget of $25 million, and I will say for that budget, it's amazing what they accomplished. Because you've got the big mansion, you've got the police station, you've got many sets, and due to the comparatively low budget, compared to other films, you can tell that they're sets, they're not actual buildings, because they didn't have enough money and obviously time to really put in enough detail to make everything look super realistic. But still, nonetheless, there's a lot in here. And I'll come to talk about CGI as well, because there's CGI in here and it's passable, but I'll talk about it a bit later. But yeah, so I also feel that if you had gone with just one half of the story, you could have used that budget completely for that one half, and fleshed that out more, so it would even look better. So it's a weird decision. I don't quite understand why they were so dead set on smushing both stories together, because again, also in terms of the budget, it doesn't work for me, because they had to split everything and make, twice the amounts of sets and everything, instead of reusing and going more into detail with ones that they had. Now, the characters are fine. I mean, okay, they don't obviously have to stick with the characters as we know them in the games, and they try and do stuff, but at times I felt like it was actually taken away from the characters. Some characters that are interesting in the games, Wesker in particularly, just felt a bit off here because spoiler, I suppose, we're talking about a franchise that's nearly 30 years old at this point. Wesker is the baddie. He betrays the team, and at the end of the first game, he turns out to be the baddie. And here he's more like a good guy who just made some bad decisions, and it takes away from his characterization because it works so well in the games. Yeah, that's just one example, but there are various things I don't agree with. They suddenly gave some characters, suddenly they give them a big backstory, which is just trying to forcibly tie places and people together. You know, it's like you didn't really need it. Again, if you give them each their own story, you don't have to just forcibly try and somehow connect things, you know, just keep it separately and you can tie them in. I mean, that's the point of having a franchise. You can have flashbacks, tie-ins to previous films and all these kind of things. So the characters were kind of okay. Leon, just so you know, Leon is the rookie in the police station. When I first saw criticisms that came out after this film, people were really tearing into him. Oh, they've really done Leon wrong. He's probably the biggest character by now, because he's in so many different parts, and he turns into a real badass, you know, after his rookie days, and he's a special agent and whatnot. But even as a rookie, you know, he's I mean, it's a bit weird because he's a rookie, so he's unexperienced, and that really comes across well, especially in the remake of the second part. But here in this film, he's like, oh, he doesn't care about police work, which just feels off because Leon, you know, he's into it. He really wants to help people with this job, and that felt a bit off. But it wasn't as bad as people were making out to be, because he does find his footing in the story and his courage and confidence, etc. So I felt by the end of it, yeah, it's fine, you know, it's okay. So he wasn't as bad as people described it. Yeah, so overall it's okay. You get to know them, I suppose, enough to maybe care about them. Not too much, I feel. They could have done a bit more. It would have been fun just watching them go through the corridors of the mansion, you know, and then you have the more horror. You turn up the horror dial, definitely. Obviously, don't have all the game stuff where you're investigating so much and reading notes and all these kind of things. Leave that out, but you can still make it more into sort of conspiracy thing where you've got the teammates plotting against each other, and you know, you realise, okay, not everyone's on my side, that kind of thing. Would have worked out great, and then you got the zombies every now and then coming in, but you know, it wasn't my decision. One other thing I do have to talk about, you can tell that the makers know the games because there are so many things inserted in here that are Easter eggs quite easily, or very much attention to detail in terms of costumes, etc. And I do appreciate that, I really do. Sets, etc. It's a lot of fun watching them, but they take a bit too far, right? You've got things that just feel really, really silly. You've got one scene, there's a fan favourite in the first game where you find, what is it? I think it's the janitor's notes, his diary, and you can see his progression as he's slowly turning into a zombie. And you know, he's got his notes, and they get more jumbled and weird as it goes on. And at some point, all he can write is itchy because he's itching all over, itchy, tasty, you know, because he's starting to eat people. And in the film, they've got this woman randomly coming up to a door, a glass door, and for some reason she's written itchy, tasty on the door, and it's like, oh wow, you know, it's a game reference. It just feels really silly. The games are very campy and silly at times too, but in the film it just feels weird because it doesn't fit, and it's just like, oh, we're going to put this in so that everyone will go, oh, Leonardo DiCaprio meme. I know where that's from. Very weird, especially I suppose if you haven't played the games, you're like, why is the bloody zombie writing itchy tasty on the screen? It's weird. Because you don't have the diary that you're reading through, you know, to explain the context. Anyway, that's just an example. So they go a bit too far with that. But you can tell there's a lot of love for the project. And like I say, with the budget, they really got far. So I must say, I'm really impressed by how far they got with the budget. Briefly talking about CGI, also that, I mean, when I saw the trailer, I was like, okay, that's looking a bit rough, and people were slamming it when it came out. I think it's fine. Again, especially thinking about that $25 million budget, it's absolutely fine. It's okay. I don't think that is bad for that. You know, thinking about all the other aspects of the film, all the sets, etc. Again, I think they did a really good job with what they had. So it's not a negative review, right? For me, it's a very mixed bag, I'll say. I enjoyed parts of the film. You know, like I say, especially that 5-minute scene. The zombie design, I didn't quite like it either, because it's more like, okay, we'll just make the whole head pale, and then the eye sockets, we'll just put some black makeup in there, so at times they look a bit more like goths at a black metal concert than zombies. So again, maybe have less of them, spend more time on the practical makeup and effects. Yeah, I think I would have preferred that, really, I must say. Leave out some of the monsters, you know, especially a CGI or so. Would have been fine with just a zombie thing, you know, because like I say, even in the game, the ultimate baddie turns out to be your own teammate, basically. I mean, you do have a big monster that you have to fight, but you know what I mean. Yeah, so I did read that, interestingly enough, on home media, it was successful enough. I mean, I bought the Blu-ray, admittedly, because it was on offer Black Friday. Because like, okay, I'll sit down, I'll watch it, let's see what it's all about. Apparently it was successful enough to make them think about sequels. So we will see, maybe there will be a sequel at some point. I do hope that they stick more to just one storyline, don't try to smush together too many elements. Because again, if you take all the good parts of this, if they really had taken just their enthusiasm about the project and all these good parts and just stuck to one of the two stories, I believe there could have been a really, really good film in this. So that disappoints me, the smushing together of two stories, because I feel that each one would have had enough in it of itself, you know, to make it a really successful film. That noise, in case you're wondering, was one of my cats. Obviously trying to add a dramatic effect. Maybe he thinks he's a dog sometimes, I'm not sure. Anyway, if you have an opportunity, especially if you're a fan, I would say watch it, you know, just for the hell of it, for the references, and it is kind of fun, etc. And you know, at least I will say, it's a lot more faithful take on Resident Evil than anything that we've seen before on the big screen. Easily the best take in terms of sticking to what the basic story is and characters, etc, etc. But like I say, if you're not a fan, you probably won't find this too exciting, I suppose. But if you don't have anything else to watch, give it a try. It might make you want to play the games, which would be the best, because the games are just amazing. They really are among the best games that I've ever played. Right. That'll be all from me today. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe. It is the best way to support this channel. Leave a comment down below about anything related to Resident Evil. If you're trying to defend the previous film franchise, don't try. You're not going to convince me. I'm sorry, they are just terrible. Absolutely terrible. They've butchered the whole thing. But, you know, it's a free world. If you want to say something, go ahead and do it. Anything you want to say down in the comments below. I'll thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one on Flying Wiener. Take care.